do these local workers, I mean, how much are they part of the IRC? Are they, how much are they trained by you? How much are they followed up by you? Or is it sort of like an outsourcing?
No, the Afghan staff who are in the National Solidarity Program are completely IRC staff. The local community councils they work with are not IRC employees. But the 500 Afghan staff that we have in Afghanistan are all IRC employees. They're not just outsourced to some other organization.
Charlotte, do you operate in the same model or a bit differently?
It's a little bit the same, but I would like to well, first of all, start by saying I think there's a lot we can learn from what ICRC has done, because if we look at Save the Children as an alliance, we are 27 members operational in over 120 countries, and we do have different cultures. We have a Save the Children from Sweden. Both Melker and I are from Sweden, and I'm going to say something that you may not like now. I think we sometimes are a little bit naive when it comes to security. Maybe you are not, or maybe that's why you're so motivated. The thing is that we come from different cultures in Save the Children Alliance as a family. And we also have different governments behind the work we do. That is a complexity that we're going to draw opportunities from, but it is challenging. So the first thing we have to do, which we are doing now, is aligning the way we are seeing security. I mean, it wasn't on top of the agenda at all 5 years ago when the Alliance had its meetings. It's top of the agenda. It's put into a context where, first of all, yes, it's about our staff, but it's much more about the civilians as such that we are helping. We need to reclaim the space of acceptance. We need to reclaim independence and impartiality. We need procedures in place. We do take the responsibility for our staff. And our staff are, like in Afghanistan, we have national staff. But we do work with partners as well, small national, local NGOs. And that's where this kind of reality around that there are costs involved is that we need training. We need a lot of training. And I want to add to the debate that there are a lot of national, international NGOs operating. Many, 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 many. And security in every entity, security in every organization, I just doubt that the capacity is there. But being an INGO of the size of Save the Children, there's a duty to be able to step up on security. So we are going to do much more. But at the same time, we need to work together. Maybe inspired by what ICRC has done. We need to work together with our colleagues. We can't accept being such a... The voice we didn't have in Sudan. I mean, we're so dependent on the UN kind of talking for us in situations like that. We should do better than that. We are a big community of NGOs. We need to work together, and we need to be able to not accept governments that are not kind of living by the rules and have an NGO voice.
How much communication is there between the different NGOs at the moment?
Well, I actually don't know. And as a Secretary General of one of the organizations, I think that tell us something. Because if there was a real cooperation, I should know. Then I have a duty to do something about not knowing it. So please tell me. Maybe Irene,
you
more.
need to say something.
Well, you know, I worked for UNHCR for 21 years before coming to Amnesty, and I've been there for 8 years. So I've seen both the humanitarian side and the human rights side. I think the humanitarian coordination and cooperation at the field level is improving, because people just have to do that in order to be able to deliver and survive. But what I find very missing is the lack of cooperation and coordination between the human rights and humanitarian actors. Because when you talk about protection of local civilians, you know, civilians in local civil society, you can't have that protection only from the perspective of humanitarian action, because that's a very time-limited protection. You know, it's very relief-oriented sometimes. It's very, how can I say, meets the physical needs of the people. But when you go into social change issues, women, and girls, for example, in those areas, those are culturally sensitive areas. Those are areas where there's going to be conflict, where, for example, women teachers in Afghanistan have been attacked and killed. In those types of situations, if you don't work humanitarian and human rights together, that doesn't mean humanitarians should be doing what human rights activists are doing or what human rights activists should be doing what humanitarians are doing. But we need to understand each other's space and support each other in a complementary way. We can sometimes say things which you can't. But if we don't say those things, if we don't have access to that information, you will get weaker. And our own activists will also be attacked. So that's where I find this sort of multi-sector cooperation is actually in a very early stage. It's done informally. I mean, with ICRC, I know it's done very informally and it's very effective. But some other organizations simply think that they can be on the ground, they can watch violations, they can keep their mouth shut, and they will be safe and their communities will be safe. And that just doesn't happen.
I just wanted to add to that, Irene. I do agree. I think that the coordination among humanitarian actors in the field is certainly improving over recent years. But where it's lacking is at other levels. And I think that that's where, internally in the ICRC, we read the changes in the 90s, well, following the Cold War, more or less, the changes of the conflictual dynamics, where we saw a fragmentation of states and groups and agendas that we couldn't believe. And where I believe there are two main challenges, I think, for any humanitarian working today. One is to really understand the context that they're in, but also to try and understand how the different contexts are linked, either at a local sort of / regional level or at a global level. And I think that's where the ICRC over the last couple of years has been trying to implement more and more institutional ways of ensuring that our delegation in the Philippines is aware of the dynamics of Afghanistan or Pakistan or Sudan, which might affect the Muslim community as a whole, which affects their operational environment on Zulu Island. Now, unfortunately, we have Eugenio Vagni still being held hostage in Zulu, so perhaps that's not a good example of where we succeeded. But I think that the different levels of complexity, the local, the regional, and the global, is something where we as humanitarians still have a lot to do. There are a few initiatives of contacts between organizations, but they're still very ad hoc. They're still everyone's still feeling their way around to see a little bit where we can find common ground and how we can interact. But there's a lot to be done there.
Jim, do you also agree that the NGOs should be talking more together, and are they? Is there any sort of forum or organization?
Yes, absolutely. They should be talking together more, and the on-the-ground coordination has definitely improved over the years. I would say I think it's relevant maybe to look at this panel in that there's no Gulf state organizations up here. There's no Chinese NGO up here. There's no organizations of some of the nations in the world who are going to write a very different future for the way humanitarian assistance is going to be done. And I think it's going to be a challenge for all of us to coordinate better with those organizations who may have a very different approach on both their assistance modalities, but also on the way that they would perceive the protection of their workers.
Can I just say that if anyone had any comment, they're welcome to come into the conversation here.
Thanks. I'm Randall Zinner, CEO of MEDAIR. And picking up on your last point, I think it's really good that you pointed out the local to the national to the global. And I'd just like to bring in here new media's impact on our work. 20 years ago, the height of technology was a fax machine. And you could segregate, you could put things in different buckets around the planet, and you were pretty safe. But now we have Facebook and Twitter and the web all over the place, connectivity all over the place, staff beneficiaries, Al-Qaeda, we have governmental donors, future staff, all looking at our identity on the web. And I'd like to hear from the panel any thoughts of how you're wrestling with those issues of how to maintain focus on your mandate, a passionate marketing department that wants to keep stuff flowing through, But knowing that your people involved in security are thinking, well, we don't want to say all that because it can bring a lot of danger to our staff. Any thoughts?